This month, we recognize survivors, emerging survivors, and those who have ultimately won the battle against breast cancer.
As women, we often sacrifice self to be mom,
wife,
colleague,
and soror. We are asking you to be intentional and perform your self-check.
Schedule a mammogram or remind someone to do these things today.
Your parents need you.
Your spouse needs you.
Your children need you.
Your community needs you.
And most importantly, your sisterhood needs you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our live breast cancer awareness webinar, The Power of Prevention, the 7 steps to reducing cancer risks. My name is Shangri-La Jones, and I will be your moderator this evening. First, I would like to say thanks to Giant Nutrition, Theta, Zeta, Sigma, Theta, Epsilon, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated for sponsoring this event this evening. Now, statistics show in 2020 that 1 in 8 of women residing in the U.S. will be diagnosed with breast cancer. And it further goes on to show that the death rate among African American women is 40% higher. That's a high rate. So what I would want you to do with me this evening is do a 1-minute icebreaker virtual event. So I would ask you to look to your left, look to your right, then look at your virtual reflection. The 1 in 8 could be any of us. See, I used to think that these types of things just happen to other people. I never ever thought it could happen to me until it did. I was 1 in the 8. So I am so happy to be here this evening, share my experiences and my journey, and hopefully we can provide some education, information, and conversation. Statistics have shown that these 3 topics and categories do help to limit and mitigate the risk of cancer. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Our keynote speaker is Melanie Berdyck. Melanie has 10 years of experience as a registered dietitian in the inpatient, outpatient, and retail settings. She is currently an in-store nutritionist for Giant Food. She provides nutritional counseling, store tours, and community education programs for customers on a variety of disease states such as diabetes, heart health, and weight loss. Melanie received her Bachelor of Science in Dietetics from Eastern Michigan University and is currently pursuing her Master's of Science in Applied Nutrition with a concentration in obesity and health prevention at the University of England in Portland, Maine. She is a certified specialist in obesity and weight management and a certified personal trainer. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Melanie Berdyck. Really quickly, we're going to have our speaker unmute her mic. So unmute your mic.
Oh.
There we go.
Oh. All right, everyone. Sorry about that. So again, I am Melanie Berdyck. I am a registered dietitian at Giant Food, based in the Mid-Atlantic region. And I'm really happy that we could be here tonight. I could join you. Cancer prevention awareness is actually a really near and dear place to my heart. Before I started with Giant, I worked right in the hospitals with cancer patients and really working from the beginning of treatment all the way through and then seeing them on their journey through survivorship. So really through all aspects. So really tonight we're going to talk about, 7 ways that you can reduce your cancer risk through optimal nutrition and lifestyle. So, and these recommendations are from the American Cancer Society and the American Institute for Cancer Research. And really any steps that we talk about tonight are really going to make a huge difference. Whether it's one change or all 7, it really can make a difference for your overall disease risk. So we want to think about first, when we're fueling our body, we want to make sure that we're eating real food as much as we can. We want to make sure that the nutrients that we're putting into our body is going to give it all those optimal nutrients, those vitamins and minerals. So when we think about our lifestyle, we want to try to eat food that's real. We know where it came from. We can picture it growing. We want to focus on filling our plates the most we can with these items. And then we want to think about minimizing the intake of processed items. And so we always want to be practical in this standpoint as well. We know we want to enjoy our life and have fun, and we're getting into the holidays. And really it's assessing, how much and how often am I eating some of these items. So there's definitely room for those treats. So, and we want to think about too, with those favorite items, that portion control. So no one ever said that ice cream is off limits or chocolate or coffee. It's just how much are we having on a regular basis? Is it a few times a week, or is it once or twice or once a month? And really, when you're putting your meals together, you want to think about having a balanced plate. So breaking that down, filling up with lots of fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, and complex carbohydrates. And we'll walk through some of those steps in the next slides. So one of the most important things we can do is really, when we're thinking about our diet and the plate that we're building for our meals, we want to focus on getting as much produce as we can. So at least getting 2 cups of fruit and at least 2.5 cups of vegetables or more a day. And this is from the dietary guidelines for Americans. And what we know is that more fruits and vegetables we have in our diet, the lower the risk of chronic disease. And these items are filled with just such powerhouses of nutrients. Those antioxidants, those phytonutrients are really going to help fight off disease, strengthen your immune system, and really just help you run at that optimum level. So when you're thinking about, your produce items, really all varieties fit. And this is one of the biggest questions that I get in the retail space is, can I do fresh or frozen or canned? You can work them all into your eating pattern. It really just depends on what you prefer to have. So really all forms fit. And I have some great examples on the next slide. So if you're looking for some ideas on what are some ways that maybe I could start increasing fruits and vegetables into my diet. Well, these are just some of many items that are available in any retailer across the country. So we have wonderful items. I can't say enough for leafy greens. You can add dark green leafy vegetables to your soups come fall now, to your sandwiches, or build a great salad for a lunch or dinner. Really going to give you those vitamins and minerals, and you're going to get so much bang for your buck on your plate, all those nutrients without all the calories. And then other things that are versatile too, frozen fruits and vegetables. I love things like the rice cauliflower, which is really popular right now. You just pop it in the microwave and it's good to go. Or putting some mixed berries on your yogurt or cereal in the morning. It's a great way to boost those antioxidants as part of your day. And the same thing with all of your different veggies. I love the mini peppers. These are great for a snack. You can grill them, you name it. And it's a great way to have a burst of color on your plate, but then also reaping the benefits of those veggies. So definitely think about your day. How many vegetables are you getting? How many fruits? And could you increase that? And little by little, as you do that, it's going to make such a difference. Now, another thing we want to think about when we're building our plate, we want to think about the types of energy sources that we're consuming. And one of the biggest ones that I know a lot of times gets a bad rap are different sources of carbohydrates. So we want to make sure when we're choosing these, we're choosing the whole options. So the whole grains, which have that fiber and those protein, and again, those powerful phytonutrients, which are disease fighters. And there's actually a great deal of research with different types of GI cancers and really helping with your heart health and just your overall gut health. So whole grains as much as possible, and they taste good and they're going to keep you full, and that's going to make a huge difference in really your heart health, your appetite, and maybe your waistline as well. And so if you're looking for grains or you're looking for new items in the store, there's a couple things that you can look for. You can use the whole grain council stamp on the packages. And so here at the bottom of the screen, we have an example of the stamp here. So on the left, you can see this 100%. So that means that all of the grains in that product are whole. So nothing has been taken away, nothing's been refined, and you're going to maximize those nutrients. And really, if you're looking for this is a great way to maybe do some swaps while you're shopping and still have something good that you love to eat, but just a little bit more nutrient dense. You'll also see this 50% spot on the label, or one on the right that doesn't have a percentage. So that indicates that there are some whole grains, but then some refined grains. And those refined grains are the ones that give us energy, but don't really stick with us long term. So definitely when you're thinking about the food choices, really opting for those whole items. Oatmeal, barley, quinoa, these are all great things. And if you're shopping, you can look at the ingredients list. If it says whole grain on the ingredient label, that means it's a good option. If it's first in the list, that's even better. And I just always love to point out all these recommendations and how to translate it when you're shopping too. So if you're thinking, I should buy some more whole grains my next shopping trip, here's some great examples. So even tomorrow morning, if you're making toast, one great thing, like a Dave's Killer Bread, has whole grains and nuts and seeds. So you're getting those heart healthy fats and that good fiber and protein too. And then also things you're going to see, even things like pancake mix now have more protein and whole grain. So again, you can still enjoy your favorite treats, but they're going to give you more nutrients, and definitely packing in that protein and fiber is really going to make a difference. And then quinoa too. You don't have to be a cook to enjoy your whole grains. So there's lots of things now that are convenient, like microwave packs. Just pop it in the microwave and then you can top on a salad and get those rich amino acids in no time too. So there's lots of wonderful things that you can find in those grains. Now, another thing we want to focus on as well when we're thinking about our lifestyle, lowering cancer risk, another big recommendation that comes from the American Institute of Cancer Research is really trying to limit the consumption of red or processed meats. So we know that red meat can be higher in saturated fat. Saturated fat can be problematic for the heart. High intake of these items may kind of shift the intake of other fruits and vegetables. So definitely keeping to a minimum or choosing leaner cuts can make a big difference. And then also looking at your processed meats as well. These items, I know they're convenient, but they tend to have a lot of sodium. And so if we can make these adjustments, it's also going to impact other parameters of your health, like blood pressure and heart health. So really, when you're thinking about protein options, think about lean, chicken or fish, and there's lots of options, whether they're plant or animal-based that you can choose from. So no matter what your preferences are, there's something for you. So great items would be like hard-boiled eggs, legumes, thinking lentil soup for fall, and then nuts and seeds. And the great thing about these items, they give you that great protein, but then also heart-healthy fats that can help with your cholesterol levels and just really give yourself that optimal nutrition. So I always love to show more items that you can find when you're shopping too. So if you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to pick some leaner choices of protein in my diet, there's lots to choose from that are also convenient too. So things like salmon or tuna, heart healthy fats, a great swap if you're typically using, a fattier cut of meat. Throw in some fish or chicken. That's a great option. Other things like yogurt or drinkable yogurts, and even new trendy products like sprouted grains. So here we have some sprouted mung bean snacks that are actually high fiber and protein too. So there's lots of things that can help maximize those nutrients that you need, but also taste good at the same time. And another thing we want to think about when we're taking steps to really take control of our health, a really big area are the type of beverages that we consume. And this is actually very fascinating. Liquid calories, things from soda, sweetened tea, or coffee drinks, they don't really register with the brain. So if I drink a large beverage and it has calories, and then I have my dinner after that, my brain doesn't know any different. It thinks that I didn't have those extra calories from the liquid. So it really doesn't help with satiety. And this is also another big area that can be a big change for individuals. Some people don't realize the number of calories that they're drinking. They might be noticing that maybe there's some changes in their weight. And this can actually increase your disease risk with weight gain. So looking at the type of beverage that you're drinking, swapping it out for something that's leaner, say, a seltzer or a sparkling water, or unsweetened tea, you still get that hydration, but it's a significant calorie savings. And that takes that stress off your body, helps with weight loss, and can also help with your blood sugar and your heart health too. And I've seen amazing results when people do this. They're able to lose weight and lower their chronic disease levels. So we also want to make sure that we're getting enough too throughout the day. So really optimizing how much you drink. So we should have at least 9 glasses of water, if not more, a day. So think about how much water you had to drink today, and maybe you're motioning for your water bottle right now. But definitely getting plenty of fluid really will give you energy, help give you mental clarity throughout the day, really is going to help your body run at the optimal level. And again, switching those beverages can be a huge calorie savings and really make a big difference in the long term. All right, so we have to talk about physical activity. So there's a lot of steps that we can do in our diet, really, again, switching from those processed items to things that are more natural, and that's extremely important. And then we also want to think about conditioning our body. So trying to be as active as we can. And everybody's in a very different place. So whether it's, starting out at just 5 minutes a day, or maybe you're more conditioned to doing an hour. It doesn't matter. Any way to increase physical activity throughout the day, that's going to help with weight management. And that's also going to help with your muscle strength, bone strength, flexibility, and really just give peace of mind. Nothing beats exercising and then feeling just that wonderful feeling of accomplishment. So what we should aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity a week. So that would be things like walking or raking the leaves, or going to the playground when you're walking your dog. So really activities that get that heart pumping. So we need that cardiovascular exercise. But with that, it's really important for women that we also take part in muscle strengthening activities as well. So that's going to help with our muscle strength and help prevent muscle loss as we age. And that can really impact our ability to burn calories and maintain our weight. So it's really important to have that combination. And really, it can be anything. It could be a YouTube video at home, or it could be an activity in the gym. Really, any combination of activities that you enjoy are going to make a difference. And like I mentioned, there's lots of different benefits to exercise. That sense of accomplishment is usually a number one driver for a lot of people, but it's a really great way to help maintain or help lose weight. That can make a huge difference. Any type of activity that helps us burn those calories, if we can maintain or lower weight, that's really going to help with inflammation in our body, and that can lower our chronic disease risk as well too. So extremely important. And it's also great for your mind, even depression and mood. Exercise is just a fabulous outlet for people. And then we also want to think about, steps that we can take in our lifestyle. We also want to think about some of our behavior patterns that we might have. You might be saying, oh, you know what? I'm actually doing really, really good. I'm getting my fruits and my vegetables. I'm getting all those items that I need in my day. And I'm not doing too bad. But maybe there's some things that we could really focus on and modify. So another area that I always encourage people to think about when they are assessing their health and wellness, what are your behaviors? So you might be thinking right now, okay, I might be guilty of a couple of things. So first, it's always good to reflect on those eating behaviors. Where, when, why, and how are you eating? We might be eating more than we realize, and this could contribute to maybe weight gain. Unfortunately, weight gain, that increases that disease risk in women, especially for breast cancer and a handful of other cancers. So really think about, where am I eating? Why am I eating? And am I actually hungry? This can be really eye-opening for people when they step back and they reflect on it. So think about some of your behaviors. Did you eat lunch at your desk today, or were you driving in the car and eating? And were you really focused on the matter at hand, the food? So really taking a look at, when, where, and why you eat. And this can be a really eye-opening experience for many people. And they may say, I'm an emotional eater, I'm a stressful eater, and really help target those behaviors. And if we're able to adjust those behaviors, that can really make a difference in our food intake and our overall health. Now, another thing that's also really important is are our sleep patterns. This is a fascinating area of research too. So getting regular sleep every single day, maintaining a pattern, that's really going to help regulate your appetite hormones. And that's going to make a significant difference in, your eating choices. And what happens if we don't get enough sleep, if we have some sleep deprivation, it doesn't allow our appetite hormones to sync properly. So it causes our hunger hormone to increase and that satiety hormone to decrease. So it kind of ends up in not a good place. So definitely keeping regular sleep patterns as much as you can. So, every day of the week, getting into bed, and that can really make a difference as well. And you might be thinking, maybe I am sleep deprived. Maybe I was really tired and hungry after that long flight I had not too long ago. You might notice those tendencies in yourself. Sleep can help manage that. And then along with that too, other things that we want to think about are stress management. Again, there can be a lot of triggers to eat, something that's more satisfying or enjoyable. So definitely think about ways that you can have an outlet, and it maybe isn't related to food. So it could be exercise or calling a girlfriend or walking the dog or yoga. It could be prayer. It could be a variety of different things that can help with your stress level. And what we know is that physical stress can increase our inflammation levels in our body. And that inflammation can lead to different types of chronic diseases. So there's a lot of overlap when it comes to diet and lifestyle. And it's always kind of food for thought on, what can I do to really take steps to manage my health? So really putting it all together, we want to make sure that we're filling our plates with plenty of fruits and vegetables. So again, you can kind of imprint the USDA My Plate in the back of your mind. Say, okay, I need to have half my plate fruits and vegetables, fresh, frozen, or canned if you can do it. Or even think of creative ways that you can add more vegetables to your day. Think those antioxidants, those phytonutrients, they're going to go after those free radicals that can cause disease. So really trying to fill up on those. And then again, that lean protein, minimizing the different sources of saturated fat in your diet. And then also those grains, swapping out any type of refined carbohydrate for those complex carbohydrates. Really satisfying and can make a huge, huge difference in how you feel. And then also too, you can add other forms of different dairy products or plant-based dairy alternatives as well to help you meet all of your different needs. So this is a great method that you can use when you're building meals at home or you're dining out. You can use that same recipe and that can help you be successful. So before we finish up, I just wanted to give some more information about what I do and what we do at Giant. So we provide free services to everyone across the country. So there's a whole team of us. There are 10 in the stores, but we're also available virtually. So if after today you still have questions or concerns or anything I can assist with, you can feel free to reach out to me and we can definitely chat to help you reach all of your goals or help address any concerns. And you can find us at giantfood.com/nutrition. You can find me and my colleagues. But then if you're thinking about other things you can do to take steps in your health, there's lots of free webinars that we have. We also have a great webisode series on our YouTube page that talks like many, many different tips on eating related to COVID-19. It can give you some ideas on how to boost vegetables or do some home cooking as well. And then we also have some other great resources, our Nutrition Made Easy blog and our different podcasts, which are a huge resource of information that I highly recommend. You can listen to them on the computer or on your favorite podcast app. So if you're thinking, maybe I need to work on my mindfulness, we have a podcast for that. If you're thinking about taking steps to manage your weight, definitely we have a podcast for that can really support you in all of your concerns. So definitely available right at your fingertips. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and conclude my portion. I appreciate spending some time with you this evening, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the program.
Dr. Dawn Davenport is the Vice President of Child and Family Services at Mental Health Center of Denver. With several years of experience in the field of community mental health, Dr. Davenport has held the role of psychologist, program manager, and clinical director. In her current role as Vice President of Child and Family Services at Mental Health Center of Denver, she oversees culturally responsive service delivery, provides vision and leadership, program development and implementation, and establishes community-based partnerships. Dr. Davenport is passionate and driven to promote the best well-being services to children and their families in the Denver area. As part of her current role, Dr. Davenport oversees the Dahlia Campus for Health and Well-Being, an innovative community center in the Northeast Park Hill neighborhood of Denver that promotes well-being across the lifespan. The site features mental health services, an inclusive preschool, dental clinic, aquaponics, farms and gardens, a teaching kitchen, and indoor and outdoor community spaces. The National Council for Behavioral Health awarded Mental Health Center of Denver with the 2018 Excellence in Behavioral Health Care Management Award, recognizing the Dahlia campus for its innovative, community-informed approach to behavioral health care. Dahlia Campus for Health and Wellbeing was honored as a 2018 finalist in Fast Company World Changing Ideas Awards for Urban Design and received the 2017 Core Values Award and Project of the Year by the International Association for Public Participation. Dawn enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 children, ages 8 and 9, who are both involved in sports and love traveling and being outdoors. Please welcome Dr. Dawn Davenport.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you all, and I am going to talk to you some about the psychological and emotional aspects of breast cancer survivorship. And so I am getting ready to share my screen, and we will get started. Are you all able to see my screen? All right. So while I want to highlight some of the emotional and psychological aspects of breast cancer, I just want to be clear that this is like a broad overview of some of the more common experiences that people have, and to recognize that everyone will have their own unique journey. So at the time of diagnosis, one of the more common experiences that people tend to encounter is what we call acute stress response. So typically this will happen around the time of diagnosis, and it revolves around, or resolves itself oftentimes around, the time where you're able to consult with your doctor and or the onset of treatment. And so how this is different from our regular stress is that sometimes it includes symptoms of irritability and depression, sleeplessness, loss of concentration, loss of appetite, as well as anxiety. And so while we may experience those at some point throughout our days when we're stressed, the acute stress response happens over a significant period of time. Again, it's 7 to 10 days. And if it lasts longer than that, it's often more problematic and could potentially lead into a different diagnosis, whether that's anxiety or depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. Individuals who are more at risk for an acute stress response that may go past the 7 to 10 days are individuals who've had prior emotional adjustment problems or who have had other behavioral health concerns such as anxiety, depression, people who have low levels of support, younger people, and often it's women. So we tend to be more susceptible than our male counterparts in this area as well. So depression is also another, I can't get this to advance. There we go. Sorry about that. So depression, let's talk a little bit about depression. So we all experience periods of sadness that come and go, whether it's around a certain event, whether it's just hormonal. When I talk about depression in this instance, I'm talking about depression that may last over a period of time. So some of the symptoms that you may exhibit are...
Can you share your screen again? It's not showing up. Can you share your screen?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Oh. Am I back? Are you able to see?
No. I just see you. I don't see your computer as a screen share.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Yep, there it is.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Let me go back to depression. Okay. So with depression, some of the symptoms that we'll be looking for would be sadness and or depression that lasts a significant period of time. Typically, for a diagnosis or a clinical diagnosis of depression, we're looking for these symptoms to last over a period of 2 weeks. So sadness and depression, difficulty concentrating, memory challenges, irritability, loss of interest in activities that you used to enjoy, changes in your sleep pattern. So you may be sleeping too much, you may be sleeping too little, change in appetite. Again, you may be eating too much, you may be eating too little. Fatigue, feelings of hopelessness or worthlessness, having an upset stomach or other physical symptoms. And also, along with depression comes thoughts of suicide or suicidality. So with breast cancer treatment, that may also make you feel sad and tired and depressed. And these feelings are complex conditions when it's overlaid with a chronic medical condition. So it can be impacted by several factors. So the type of diagnosis that you receive, the type of treatment that you receive, your age, hormonal changes, your life experiences, genetics. So there's a whole bunch of factors that come into play that can contribute to your mental health. Anxiety is another mood situation that people often experience. So, and anxiety can look like a bunch of different things. So it's worry. It is. It can show up as panic attacks where you become super anxious and you may get triggered by certain events, whether it's going to your doctor's visits or medical tests or treatment, and you just feel this incredible sense of not being able to breathe. Your chest is tightening, and for some people, it feels like they're gonna die when they have those types of panic attacks. Phobias are another type of anxiety that show up, where people may become phobic of going to certain places that they may associate with breast cancer or treatment or hospitals or what have you. And then generalized anxiety disorder is just a situation where you feel anxious just in general. You have this underlying sense of unease and restlessness that permeates most of what you do. Now, one of the more significant anxiety disorders is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So although it's not necessarily always associated with cancer, a lot of what happens throughout the course of being diagnosed to treatment and post-treatment can be very traumatic for certain people. So PTSD is typically developed after experiencing a life-threatening situation and is marked by overwhelming feelings of anxiety and or worry. And some of those symptoms include nightmares or flashbacks, avoidance, frightening or intrusive thoughts, strong feelings of guilt, hopelessness, shame, trouble sleeping and concentrating, self-destructive behavior, and difficulty feeling emotions. So PTSD, again, can happen after any of those, again, typically life-threatening instances. So that it's often always associated with like war or physical or sexual attack. But again, there's also a component of medical trauma that should be taken into consideration as well. And so the PTSD symptoms will typically appear within 3 months of a traumatic event, and they'll last longer than a month and they have a significant impact on your daily life. So for individuals who are experiencing PTSD symptoms, it's often good to talk to someone about those symptoms, because there may be some support that the individuals that you talk with can provide. So whether it's counseling, if it's significant enough, there are medication treatments that might be helpful. But you always want to consult with your physician, especially if you're also doing cancer treatment at the same time. So in addition to some of the more serious mental health diagnoses like depression and anxiety and post-traumatic stress, there are other psychological impacts that having a diagnosis of breast cancer can cause. So fear of kind of not knowing what's going to happen, the unknown, fear of the whole process, going through being diagnosed, getting treatment, what happens after treatment. Body image is another psychological impact. And so how does that impact you depending on what you've had to go through, whether it's a mastectomy, whether it's scars from having biopsies. And so body image is another impact, that a psychological component that will have an impact on your behavioral health. Self-esteem, self-confidence, and for some people, survivor's guilt shows up, where they're wondering why they were able to make it and not everybody else. So survivor's guilt typically pops up for individuals who are in different support groups, where individuals become friends with other survivors, and oftentimes they may not make it. And so for individuals who do make it, survivor's guilt at times will come into play, wondering why someone else passed and they're still here. What is it about them that allowed them to continue to survive? And as these things come up, it's very important to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who are supportive and who love you, and just being able to take the time to focus on yourself and realize the ways that you are able to be stronger through this process, because you are still alive, and there's much more that you have to offer. Physical impact. Again, physical fatigue and exhaustion from going through the treatment, trouble sleeping, digestive issues, memory and attention difficulties, again, the scars. Some individuals experience infertility and hot flashes. All of these physical components can have an impact on your behavioral health. Another area is stressors. So as you go through treatment, there may be financial concerns associated with the treatment that you're receiving. There may be wonderments around what your new normal is going to look like. Missed opportunities in terms of the things that you may or may not have missed out on in your life as you were going through treatment. And then for some individuals, post-treatment can also be an area where more behavioral health symptoms show up, especially around lack of support. So as people are going through treatment, there's often a lot of support. People want to do a lot for you. They want to help you. And then what some women, well, and men have recognized is that after treatment is over, they don't necessarily have that same level of support, and it can be lonely. So there's a component of isolation that some people may experience during that time as well. One of the other things that happens is that some people go through what is just normally called the stages of grief. And so for individuals that are diagnosed with cancer, these stages are often associated with the different levels of where they are in their treatment. So the first stage, and these stages of grief are similar across they're the standard stages of grief, if you will. So the first stage is denial. And so people are overwhelmed with feelings of shock, trying to understand what is happening and figuring out how to adjust to what they just learned. How do they absorb this information? How do they make sense of this? Some people, so denial is a coping mechanism. And in some instances, it can be helpful. And in other instances, it may not be helpful. And so in those instances where it's not helpful, it's where it may prevent someone from actually dealing effectively with issues that are important. So if you're in denial that you actually have cancer, then you may not be inclined to actually follow through with treatment. The second stage is anger. And this can look like a whole host of things for people. During this phase, there's often a lot of questioning, like, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? How come it didn't happen to somebody else? Friends and family are important supports during this time, just to have someone to talk to that can be supportive of you regardless of what may come at them. Bargaining is the third stage. And again, this is another questioning phase. So wondering and thinking, what if? So a lot of what if questions. What if I had only done this? What if I had only stopped smoking? What if I had only stopped eating sugar? Or just wondering if you had done something different, maybe this would not have happened. Changing is another kind of component of bargaining. And so that's where people decide they want to change their lifestyle, whether it's to exercise more or to get more sleep, and making promises to, whatever the deity is that they worship, that if they change their behavior, then maybe there can be some type of exchange of good health. So those are some of the components that fall into the bargaining phase. Depression is another phase. That's usually the fourth stage. And that, again, affects everything from your mood to your energy levels, sleeping, eating, your libido, all of those things. And then the fifth level is acceptance. And so that's where you get to the point where you're okay, and you've reconciled that this is the diagnosis, I will need treatment, and you start to kind of put your plans and stuff in place. So while they have outlined the stages of grief in this order, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's not necessarily how people go through those levels of depression. Of grief, sorry. And so you may start down the road and realize that, you're angry, and then you start your bargaining, and then for whatever reason, you go back to denial or anger. You may make it to depression and then go back to anger. So it's not a linear experience, but it's an experience that contains a lot of different components and that are impacted by a lot of different elements of your life. So again, treatment, your supports, your diet, exercise. And so being patient with yourself as you experience these different stages of grief and knowing that you will make it through. I've got a little graph here. So if this was linear, this is what it would look like, where you are happy and healthy, and then you get a diagnosis, then you get treatment, and then this post-treatment, and then you transition into becoming the new you. But it doesn't really happen like that because you move back and forth throughout this path. And eventually you do get to this place, but it's not necessarily the same path for everyone. And everybody has different, again, coping styles and resources. So coping. So with fear, one of the biggest things to do is to be able to take control over what is controllable, and to talk about your fears with other people. Stress and anxiety, some of the things that are helpful for that are exercise and eating well, meditating, and for some, journaling is helpful as well. Connection, regardless is always helpful, as long as you're connecting with healthy, connecting with others where you have a healthy relationship. So connections, friends and families. So we often get questions about what you should and shouldn't do for individuals who are experiencing, who are going through cancer and who have survived cancer. So some of the biggest things are to listen and to talk to, just be open to the conversation. So for some people, it's hard for them to talk about cancer, and there's like sometimes a stigma associated with cancer, if you will, where it makes people hard to talk about it. They're uncomfortable. They don't know what to say. Some people whisper instead of just, saying it out loud. And so being able to kind of step into that space where you're not squeamish to talk about it. And if you are, then talk about things that you and your friend used to, or family member used to talk about before the diagnosis of cancer. Don't shy away from having conversations, though. Be aware of symptoms. So individuals that are experiencing, depression or anxiety, be aware of what those look like. You know your family or your friend, and you know what's normal for them or what's typical for them or how you typically experience them. So be aware of the symptoms and when things look different or they've changed. Are they crying more often, or do they not want to, join you for a spades game or whatever, and that's one of their favorite things. So be mindful of any changes that you notice, and again, talk to them about it. Listen to what they have to say. Get them moving. We just heard how important exercise is, so do what you can to get them up and about. Engage them in activities that they enjoy. Also allow for self-reliance. So there's times where people feel good and times when people don't feel so well. And so in those times where people are feeling well and feel like they can do things for themselves and want to do things for themselves, by all means, let them do that. And at the same time, when they're not, be willing to step in and help. And whatever you do, make sure that you follow through with whatever you've promised. Offering to help with childcare or transportation is always helpful. And organizing friends and families, whether it's around a meal train or who's going to check in on the family or who's going to do household chores, whatever that looks like. Emails, text, cards, that's always helpful. And try again. So oftentimes people, when they're in this going through treatment or they're in the diagnosis phase or post-treatment, sometimes people don't know what they need. And so don't give up. If people keep saying, I don't know, keep trying, keep asking, keep listening, keep talking. Some of the don'ts. Again, these are just general guidelines. You absolutely know your friends and families better and are able to just kind of gauge what makes sense and what may not make sense for your loved ones. So how are you feeling? It's a great question, nice question, well-intended, and chances are you're asking because you really want to know. However, cancer patients get asked this a lot. And sometimes they just have one or two choices. They can either act like everything is okay, or they can tell you the truth. And so whichever path they decide to take, you need to be very sure that you are ready to handle whatever the answer is. And not respond with, don't worry, I'm sure you will be fine. Because do you know that for sure? So we've got to make sure that we choose our words wisely, and avoid saying things that could cause the cancer patient more stress or cause them to feel like they need to take care of you and your emotions. And don't feel like you have to say anything at all. Again, listening is also just as important as talking. Don't give advice unless asked. And then the last one that I hear a lot is not to compare. So while You may know someone who has survived breast cancer or a different type of cancer. Everybody's experience is different. And so we need to be really mindful of that as we are having these conversations and trying not to minimize someone's experience to compare them to somebody else just because we may feel awkward about talking about it. So what can we do? And so radical self-care is one of the things that I love to talk about. And this is not just for the person who is surviving cancer, but it's also for the caregivers. So self-care is incredibly important. So getting enough sleep, eating well. A lot of people find journaling to be very helpful, moving your body regularly, meditating or doing yoga, taking a bath. So just being in water is often helpful and soothing. Reading for pleasure. Again, connecting with loved ones, getting sunshine. Sunshine is so important to our overall well-being. And make yourself a priority. Set and maintain healthy boundaries. Sit quietly for a few moments. We are also busy all of the time. So have a few moments where you can just sit and do nothing. Detox your relationships. If you know you're in a relationship and you are giving more or it's toxic, take a step back and see whether or not those relationships are healthy for you right now. And then most importantly, know that the word no is actually a complete sentence. You don't necessarily have to explain or validate or do any of that. No can just be no. So as you step into that space where you're ready to do this radical self-care, and what's radical about it is just knowing yourself and making the commitment to meet your emotional, spiritual, and physical needs above everything else. And so as women, we typically put everyone else's needs above ours. And so with radical self-care, it's going to be really important that you put yourself first and ask yourself, what do I need? What feels good? And how do I show true compassion for myself? So I had also, I had received the questions and have answered those. So I wasn't sure. I see I'm short on time. So would you like for me to wait or just send those answers in a different way?
If we can wait so that we can give the other presenters their time, we'll circle back around.
Okay. All right. And that is what I have. So I hope you all are doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. And in doing that, one of the things that is the most helpful is remembering to breathe. If you just stop and breathe and take full breaths, that will help regulate you regardless of what you're doing. Thank you.
Dr. Marvella Ford is the Associate Director of Cancer Disparities at Hollings Cancer Center at the Medical University of South Carolina. She has developed research methods to remove barriers and facilitate recruitment and retention of patients in clinical trials, particularly among African Americans and underserved populations. Dr. Ford's research focuses on personal and social economic factors impacting cancer screening and detection among underserved and minority populations, such as race, gender, and education. Dr. Ford has authored more than 85 peer-reviewed publications and has served on a number of boards and committees. Dr. Ford is an awarded pre- and postdoctoral fellowship from the National Institute on Aging. Dr. Monique Gary is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, master of science, and fellow of the American College of Surgeons. She's a board-certified, fellowship-trained breast surgical oncologist and medical director of the Grandview Health Penn Cancer Network Cancer Program in Pennsylvania, where she also serves as director of the breast program. As a physician, researcher, advocate, and expert on cancer and healthcare disparities, She is passionate about developing integrative, holistic, and innovative approaches to cancer treatment, prevention, and survivorship. Dr. Monique Gary is Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, Master of Science, and Fellow of the American College of Surgeons. She is a board-certified fellowship-trained breast cancer surgical oncologist and medical director of the Grandview Health Penn Cancer Network Cancer Program in Pennsylvania, where she also serves as director of the breast program. As a physician, researcher, advocate, and expert on cancer and healthcare disparities, she is passionate about developing integrative, holistic, and innovative approaches to cancer treatment, prevention, and survivorship. Dr. Gary serves on the board of several national oncology advocacy and empowerment organizations, serving as medical director for Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, and a medical advisor for Tiger Lily Foundation. She is also a member of the board of directors for the American Society of Breast Surgeons. Dr. Gary was recognized as a leading physician of the world and top breast surgeon in Pennsylvania for 2017, 18, and 19, and is a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, the highest distinction awarded to surgeons in the nation. Carmen Pace is a registered nurse with nursing experience in a variety of clinical settings, including oncology. She graduated from the University of Texas at Tyler with a master's in public administration with a concentration in healthcare administration. She is currently a patient advocate at PCRI's Improving Outcomes Important to Patients Healthcare Delivery and Disparity Research Advisory Panel. She also sits on the steering committee for the PCRI About Network and serves as co-chair for the committee's research prioritization work group and a state impact leader for the Dallas chapter of FORCE, Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered. Her personal experience with breast cancer has given her a passion to provide help, support, and advocate for those who are experiencing difficulty dealing with the diagnosis and walk alongside those who are on their journey. Please welcome our panelists for the next section.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Great. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And as a two-time breast cancer survivor, I just applaud you for having tonight's session. And I also thank you for the honor and the privilege of being with you this evening. Can you see the slide?
I cannot yet. Yes. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll spend a few minutes tonight just talking about the importance of including diverse populations in clinical trials. And a lot of these trials that racially and ethnically diverse populations have higher cancer incidence and mortality rates compared to our white counterparts. We are not well represented in clinical trials. When you look at this graph, this shows the new cancer cases, the rate of cases by racial and ethnic group. And you can see that white women actually get diagnosed with breast cancer at much higher rates than members of other groups like Black women, Asian Pacific Islanders, Latinx women, and American Indian Alaskan Natives. However, when you look at the death rates, you can see that the death rates, although they have gone down for almost all groups, there is still a huge gap. When you look at 2009 to 2017 and look at African American Black women who still far and above have the highest breast cancer death rate than any other group. And when you look at our 5-year survival, you can see that Black women are less likely than any other group of women. Here we are at 93%. Less like our rate is 93. We're less likely to have localized breast cancer, which means we're less likely to have our cancer detected when it's localized and caught early. And when you look at our stage distribution, you can see again, here we are at 55 compared to white women at 65, American Indian women at 58, Hispanic women or Latinx women at 57, and Asian Pacific Islanders at 64. We have the lowest rate of localized stage. And we have, when you look at the we have the highest rate of having our cancer detected. That means that it's really important for us to participate in trials and in screening trials. We've heard a lot of prevention activities tonight, which was wonderful. We heard about nutrition, physical activity, taking care of our mental health, and participating in trials is also very important. When a study was published recently in 2017, and it showed that only 2% of NCI-sponsored trials focused on racial and ethnic minorities, even though we make up 38% of the population. And when you look at the cancer incidence rates per 100,000, you can see that Blacks, again, we have one of the highest rates of cancer incidence, but one of the lowest rates of clinical trial enrollment. And unfortunately, what that means is that if we're not participating in these trials, that means that we are not benefiting from the results of the trial. And I started my research career 26 years ago. And when I started, you could pick up almost any journal on a breast cancer study. And they would say, well, we didn't have very many African Americans in the study, so future studies should really work hard to include more members of this group. And I'm seeing the same paragraph in the articles today. A lot of the large federally funded, tax dollar paid for trials don't have enough of us in the trials to make meaningful conclusions about the therapeutic intervention that's being tested and whether it will work in our populations. So the NIH Revitalization Act said that if investigators receive funding, they have to take steps to include groups that represent the people in their catchment area, in their geographic region, or in the US as a whole. So Dr. Moon Chen published a paper recently and saw that the rates of participation of people of color was very low. Some studies even failed to report race and ethnicity at all. So I wanted to talk with you, there is hope. I wanted to talk with you about some of the National Cancer Institute's initiatives to enhance diversity in cancer clinical trials. We have what's called an NCORE, the National Cancer Institute Community Oncology Research Program, and this is a program that brings clinical trials to the sites where people are in their communities so that they don't have to travel long distances to participate in the trials. We're working with community cancer centers, not just large academic medical centers, to bring trials to people in the communities where they live. The NCORE network is large, and some of the sites, 12, are minority and medically underserved sites that focus specifically on underserved populations. And the NCORE network basically just makes these trials available to people, whether they're prevention trials, supportive care trials like helping with mental health, and symptom management, screening trials, and surveillance trials, as well as treatment trials, cancer care delivery research, imaging trials, and health disparities studies. So these, the NCORE network is very important, and we have actually an NCORE grant at the Medical University of South Carolina Hollings Cancer Center, where I live and work. And so basically in our state, we're really trying to make sure that people around our state have access to clinical trials. I wanted to just briefly share with you a study that we just completed last December. And it's not breast cancer focused, but it is focused entirely on African Americans. So just to give you, I wanted to use this as an example to show you what goes on when we conduct clinical trials. So we had a study and we were focusing on lung cancer because African Americans with early stage lung cancer are 50% less likely to get surgery than whites. And that's on a national level. So our goal was to recruit 200 people, 100 in the usual care arm and 100 in the intervention arm, which was basically testing a patient navigation intervention to find out whether having a navigator would help people overcome the barriers that would keep them from getting surgery. And we started with 5 sites, 4 in South Carolina and 1 in Georgia. When we first started this study, my thought was we only need 200 people. We're going to complete the study in 2 years. We're going to have to come up with some new aims for the other 3 years of the study. Well, as it turned out, we could not recruit people with 5 sites. At the end of the first 2 years, we had recruited 22 people. And as you know, no study will stay open if you've only recruited 22 people in 2 years. So we ended up having 22 sites across the country, from Delaware to Nevada, just to recruit 200 African Americans with early stage lung cancer. This shows our recruitment. Here we were with 22 people in January of 2016. And the study just ended, but you can see that once we became an NCORE site and we started running the study through the NCORE and reaching people in the communities, we were able to recruit 200 people, but it still took 22 sites and 6 years to recruit 200 people. Part of the problem is that most of the patients that were seen at the cancer centers had late stage lung cancer, and we were looking for people with early stage lung cancer. So that in itself raises a lot of questions about the importance of access to care and making sure that people get in to see doctors at an early, so they can get diagnosed at an early stage. The National Cancer Institute also has a Geographic Management of Cancer Health Disparities Program, or GMAP, which really focuses on events like this, communicating and disseminating information to people in the community, letting people know the resources that are available to them to even participate in trials. And also we work with students, community health educators, and community members, because we want to make sure that everybody in the community has access to information about trials that they or their family members or their friends or their church members might be interested in. So this is more about GMAP. And of course, we have our NCI National Outreach Network, which is a wonderful tool. It provides health educators all over the country that participate in events like this to take really important information about breast cancer and other cancers to communities, so that we can try to communicate information in a very understandable way so that it's meaningful, it has meaning to the participants. At the Medical University of South Carolina, Collings Cancer Center, we have a Train the Trainer program, and our community health educator, Ms. Melanie is actually participating tonight. And so we go out into the community. We have a 4-hour session. Of course, now we're doing this virtually with the new parameters that we're working in. And so one of our modules focuses on the importance of participating in cancer clinical trials. And we review the Tuskegee syphilis study. We always ask people, who's heard of the Tuskegee syphilis study? And every hand goes up. But then when we ask them what they've heard, we get a lot of different stories. Some people heard that the men were injected or infected with syphilis. They hear all kinds of things. So we listen, and then I share my story. So my story is that back in 1996, I was invited to what was then Tuskegee Institute to give a presentation on strategies to reach African American communities in clinical trials. And the conference there was for 3 days. This was a 3-day conference focusing on increasing diversity in cancer clinical trials. And at the conference were the lawyer, the attorney who represented the men in the Tuskegee study, and some of the men in the Tuskegee study, several of them. And at the very end of the conference, their attorney, Mr. Gray, stood up and he said, the men, he called them the men asked me to speak to you on their behalf. And he said, first of all, they're appalled that so few African Americans and people of color are participating in clinical trials, because they feel that because of everything that they went through, we now have safeguards in place that did not exist before. Before the men participated in the Tuskegee study, we did not have consent forms. We did not have institutional review boards or human rights boards. We did not have data and safety monitoring committees. We did not have multiple levels of oversight to make sure that people in trials are protected. And Mr. Gray said the men are proud that what they went through makes things easier for us today. But he said they are appalled because if we don't participate in trials, then it makes everything that they went through in vain. And that just stopped me in my tracks because I had never thought of it that way. And I thought, you know, we owe them a debt of gratitude because we have protections in place so that the Tuskegee study could not happen today. You've heard about the COVID-19 vaccines and the antibody testing and how several of the trials have been stopped because of safety concerns. We owe that debt to the men who participated in the Tuskegee study. And their message, which I am sharing with you tonight, is please, please take advantage of the clinical trials, participate. We cannot get left out. We cannot get left behind. We have to have access to these trials so that we can benefit from all the cutting edge therapeutic interventions and treatments that are available. And we want to make sure that those treatments work as well in our populations as they do in other communities. And if they need to be tweaked for our communities, then we will only know that by participating in trials. Thank you.
That was incredible.
It really was. And I thank you so much for your information.
Thank you.
It will be very helpful when I speak to other people, when I speak to individuals as I'm advocating, when I speak to them about participating in clinical trials. This would be very helpful to know that those men, because that is why we have the historical trepidation about participating. And I totally understand, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to know that now we almost have like a conclusion to that. It's not just this happened to them and then nothing. And I kind of figured, and I didn't do my own research, and it's my fault. But I figured that's kind of how the IRB, and I would tell people we have IRBs in place now. We have all of these processes in place to make sure those kinds of things don't happen.
It's true. You know, I'm the chair of the IRB at my hospital, and we have community members, we have researchers, we have surgeons, we have clergy. Everybody sits on this community to try to make sure that the trials that are being implemented are easy to understand. They're at a 6th grade reading level to make sure that they are fair for participants and that we would do no harm. It is interesting to note, I think, during the COVID-19 crisis, some of the safeguards and safety nets that have been a bit circumvented. I think it reminds us to be very vigilant as we look at what's happening with Corona and the new drugs that are being approved so rapidly. And I think it is just really important for us to make sure that we continue to uphold the standards of the Institutional Review Board, because we continue to be the poster child for all of the worst of every disease. Whether it's the coronavirus, diabetes, hypertension. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as people of color to make sure that we take advantage of clinical trials, to make sure that we ask about them, because we can't just afford to go Tuskegee and Henrietta Lacks anymore and say, we're just going to check out of that realm, but to make sure that we are included in those trials, because it can and will save our lives. It will make advances for us and for our disease states more apparent, more affordable. The data will be more balanced. The treatments will be more targeted. So I think there's so many benefits, truly.
That's exactly right. And we always tell people in the community that community members are always needed. I'm really happy to say that we have a minister from the AME Church who's joined NUSC's IRB, and people in the community are thrilled to find out that they can go and participate and that their voice can be heard. And we want to make sure that people have this information because they can have the power to say, no, as you said, no, this language is too, nobody in the community is going to understand the consent form. Or to say, why do they need 12 blood draws over 12 weeks? Can you do one at the beginning and then one at the end of the 12 weeks? Because you have to realize that every time you ask the patient to come in for a blood draw for your study, they may be missing work and missing pay. So we really need to have the patient's perspective included in the IRBs and advocates for the community members as well.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. So I really appreciate this. I just can't tell you, I can't thank you enough for presenting this.
I think it's also really important before we close to remember that not all trials are drug trials. So when we talk about, what we do for cancer patients, for example, there's so much we don't know. So there are trials that are exercise trials. There are ways to mitigate toxicities of neuropathy and hair loss, and diet trials, prayer, meditation, yoga, all sorts of what we call real world data that does not involve certainly receiving placebo drugs versus standard of care. Cancer trials are not designed that way. They are designed to give you the standard of care plus something else. But there are trials that don't involve drugs. And it's just so much that we don't know about what works for our bodies and what works for our people that we should be asking our doctors about it. Because the number one reason why Black people are not enrolled in clinical trials is because we are not asked. And that's because it comes back to us as a medical community. Make sure that we involve our patients, but we can ask our doctors about it as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
That's right. And so we're working on it from both ends so that you as physicians can encourage your colleagues to ask their patients to participate in trials. And from the community perspective, we're going out to the community and we're empowering people to say, these are the questions you need to ask your doctor. Is there a trial available for my condition? Who do I talk to? Where do I sign up? What are the... And so when people know, they can take that information and they can benefit from it. Because the point that you just raised, when we hear the word research, if we just completely distance ourselves from research, and we are not benefiting not only from drug trials, but from mental health therapeutics. We just heard a wonderful presentation on mental health. You talked about yoga breathing, stress relievers. These are all things that really benefit us in our communities. And if we just distance ourselves because we heard the word research, then we won't get those benefits.
Jackie Wesley is a 17-year breast cancer survivor. She has also created several annual events called Dancing with Breast Cancer Stars, which is a black tie event. She's also created an event that celebrates and acknowledges survivors' lives, and Stepping for a Cure, which focuses on breast health care, nutrition, and exercise, focusing her attention on educating the African American community and faith-based communities on breast cancer. Tracy Drayton is a member of Theta, Zeta, Sigma Alumnae chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. She is a 13-year breast cancer survivor, a member of Shorter AME Church in Denver, Colorado, as well as their breast cancer ministry. She is a Susan G. Komen grant recipient and serves on the Susan G. Komen African American Advisory Council of the American Cancer Society. She is the former Miss Colorado, United States from 2017. Dr. Sherry Frost Roth is a breast cancer survivor and advocate. Dr. Frost Roth is an experienced contributor in higher education, including lesson planning, literacy, English, and adult education. Because of her journey with breast cancer, she's a passionate advocate and educator about breast cancer awareness and prevention. Andra Maddox is a registered nurse who has worked in nursing for 26 years, and she is a 6-year breast cancer survivor. She was a 2012 recipient of the Superhero Award, one of 100 chosen out of 500 individuals within the Global United Healthcare Corporation. Antoinette Boykins has a Master's of Business Administration, and she is a 5-year breast cancer survivor. She uses line dancing and ballroom dancing as a means for coping with her condition. Carmen Pace, one of our previous featured panelists, is also a breast cancer survivor, and our moderator, Shangri-La Jones, who's also a member of Theta Zeta Sigma of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, is also a breast cancer survivor. Please welcome our panel.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and I'm happy to have our panel here today. So we're going to start this conversation off with Jackie Wesley, just telling us a little bit about her advocacy role, how she got started, what inspired her, what is advocacy, and how do you move it forward. So Jackie?
Thank you and for having me this evening. I'm glad to be here. My breast cancer journey started many years ago. I'm actually a 17-year survivor. And so my journey actually was spirit-filled. I had experienced about 4 benign lumps before I was diagnosed. I, like a lot of people, don't want to get mammograms. I had decided I wasn't going to get another one because they were all benign. Didn't go to the doctor for about 2.5, 3 years. And at a conference for women, and one of our doctors was speaking, one of our African-American sister doctors, and she started talking about breast cancer, and immediately there was a light from her to me. The room went completely dark. And at that point, the Lord told me, he's like, you got breast cancer. So I went running home and told my husband, and was diagnosed with stage 3B in about, I don't know, it was maybe a month or so. And so within a 3.5 to 4 month period, I was diagnosed with stage 3B invasive carcinoma, and I had a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction. I did chemotherapy and treatment for about 5 years. And I just asked God, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And he said, to tell your story. And so that's kind of how my journey started. I didn't know how to tell my story. So I ended up writing a stage play about surviving breast cancer. And that kind of went over pretty well. And each moment in my life, I would always ask God, what do you want me to do next? And so we did Stepping for a Cure, which is like health, nutrition, and exercise. And then we actually, he said, I want you to honor those survivors, honor those women that are heroes, because, when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, sometimes it can be such a lonely journey, and he said to honor the women. So that's how Dancing with Breast Cancer Stars came about. And we've done it about 5 years. We've been up to about 350 plus women. And so we just honor those women that particular day and pamper them all day long. And it's just amazing that, when you are guided by the Holy Spirit, how he will take you exactly where he will want you to go. So it's very important to me to make sure that as I'm in the community, just to share with women boldly, about the journey with breast cancer without, being ashamed of it, because it can be a very, shameful thing, because we're talking about our girls. So I'm just pretty bold about it. I'm not afraid of it. I talk to all women, and I've talked to all women about, getting, checking yourself monthly. If you have any doubt at all, see your doctor. So it's very important to me to just share with people, what my journey was. So hopefully that their journey, if they have to go that road, they at least have somebody that they know in the community that they can talk to.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
We're going to move on to Tracy. Tracy?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by telling you my story. Actually, it started when I was getting my yearly mammogram, and that was November 2007. And so when I went to the doctors to get my mammogram, everything was fine. We'll come back in a year. You get a letter in the mail, and surely enough, I did. But I want to tell you, ladies, the advocacy is really important, that you really need to advocate for yourself. And what it was, even though I had a mammogram and I was told that everything was fine, come back in a year for my next yearly one, I continued to feel a lump even 2 to 3 weeks later. Now, although I did have a mammogram, I went back and I questioned the doctor that told me the same, that you're fine. So you have to be an advocate. You have to stand up, even though what the results may initially be. And so with that, I found a lump, and that was cancer, but it was very, very in the early stages. I did have chemotherapy. I did have radiation. But I will tell you also, having a support element, whether it's your family, whether it's your church, and that's where my journey started, is at Shorter Community AME Church with the breast cancer ministry. And with that, I found it was very important because there were women just like me who've gone through the same situation. And so we were supporting one another, talking about how do we get through this. And so we come to find that it's very important to tell our story, because at first I was afraid to tell. I didn't want anybody to know. Why is that? It's very important to let women know, other people know what your story is and what your journey is. And when you do that, you realize that there are other women in the same situation. And so with that, I felt compelled to continue advocating to women, educating them about how important it is to know the changes that are taking place. And then also working at the Susan G. Komen office, advocating on behalf of the African American Advisory Council, where these are a group of women, survivors, who actually go into the community, whether it be health fairs, but we advocate on behalf of breast health. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more. But I just wanted to let you know that advocacy is very, very important. Don't rely on everything that is being told to you. But if you feel there is something that is not correct, you have to be an advocate for yourself. If you're advocating to get your mammogram scheduled, if you're advocating to talk about breast health to other women, you're already an advocate. But I just want to let you know, having family support, having church women supportive, and also community supportive, you find that there are other women who are in your same situation. And so that's why I decided to be the founder of True Grace and Consulting. And it is consulting women who have questions of where they can go to get resources, funding, food, transportation, and also grant element from Susan G. Komen. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. Before we segue into Dr. Frost and her experience, I think mostly with women, it is our overall body image. You know, we see on magazines and on televisions and commercials, we're supposed to look a certain way. So when you're going through something, you are so ashamed and you don't want to tell anyone because you have seen your physicality change. And I know for me, you're walking around, someone noticed these idiosyncrasies and I don't look the same and what's going on. Can somebody see that? So it's just a hard way to get into a situation where it's like you want to share that. Your self-esteem has hit rock bottom, and especially when you're going through the process and you're looking back like, wow, this happened to me. So we're going to transition on to Dr. Frost. Hi.
Hi. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm hearing my story again and again. Like Tracy, I had an A+ mammogram in September, but in October, I felt a lump in my breast. And I had to go back, and they're saying, no, you have a good mammogram. And they tried everything. What they finally detected it is with that horrid breast MRI. Terribly uncomfortable, but that's where they got the information. So the advocating for yourself, the speaking up and telling your story, one of the previous presenters talked about being shy, being reluctant to tell your story. But I always said, it isn't syphilis. I didn't do anything wrong. And I always tell people, yes, I'm willing to talk about it. I'm happy to talk about it. And that's what helped me get through. Telling my story, having people listening to what I had to say, and having people to go to. Unfortunately, I am in a family with 2 sisters, and all 3 of us, thank God, are breast cancer survivors. So we all went through this. So I had a built-in network that was helped me get through this. When I was diagnosed, my daughter and my daughter-in-law flew into town to be with me through the surgeries, through the treatments. I found the treatments very difficult to go through. I have scars on my body from the radiation. So it was a journey. I am happy to be on the other side and happy to share my story with other women.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Frost. So we're moving to Andrea and welcome her to the panel. Hi.
Hi. Oh, wow. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, because I thought I'd keep these in so I wouldn't have background noise. And first of all, I just want to thank you for this whole symposium. It has been amazing just to remind us that we do make a difference. We can say something and share our stories. And my story, very briefly, since I don't want to take up time, started with not a challenge, but a cry unto God because I wanted to have a closer walk with him. And I always say, when I prayed that prayer, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And what a way to get to know your God is through having breast cancer. I wasn't a lump. I had gone to my physician. I'm really good about my annuals, and but my mammogram showed some calcifications that had changed. And so my primary care doctor said, I need you to get an MRI and see a breast surgeon. And I was a little hesitant, but I decided, let me go do it. And sure enough, they decided to do a biopsy. And my biopsy came back on one of the calcifications positive. It was just a grade 1. They decided to check the lymph nodes. The first lymph node was negative. The second one was positive. Now, the thing about the calcifications is it looks like somebody shot like BBs shot all over your body. So there wasn't a lump. I wouldn't have found it on breast exam. And initially, I was not supposed to have radiation or chemo. I was just supposed to have the mastectomy and reconstruction, go on my merry way. Well, due to the second lymph node being positive, I bought radiation, I bought chemo, I bought revisions ×4 every month or so. When I started my chemo, I couldn't even reconstruct because I would spring a leak. So I had multiple surgeries. Total, I think now I have the lap flap at the end after I had gone through all my chemo. So a lot of surgeries, but through it all, and that's why I say I started it with the getting to know God on a more personal note. I didn't experience the depression that could come. People didn't even know that I had breast cancer, a lot of them, and I'm sorry about that now because at my church, I still sang in the choir when I wasn't having my surgery. I was back in a couple of weeks, putting on my prosthesis, still singing and praising God. And I never shared my story. I just asked my pastor for prayer. Now I'm ashamed that I didn't because 2 years later, when I had gone through everything, we had I finally shared my story and people were like, oh my gosh, we didn't even know you had cancer. The support that I could have been, because after that, more and more people came up to me and said, listen, I'm a little afraid. I don't want to go get a mammogram. And so it opened up the avenue for people to come and start talking about it. So I'm sorry that I think I let them down and God down, but now, especially after tonight, I will go ahead and share my story, not just that, but be an advocate and not be afraid, as the doctor said, to even participate in trials or whatever, because it is so important that we as Black women not only, help others, but we have value and people need to know that they are valued. And no matter what it looks like, we get so down on ourselves with our self-image sometimes, like you said, Shangri-La, Like, do I look the same? People are going to look at me different. You know, I was bald and, you know, just the whole gamut. But I thank God that because of his loving kindness, he drew me closer. And now I'm able to speak out about things. And this is the first time I've actually gone real public other than at church. So I thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for all the women who have shared their story and just been a part of this wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. That's beautiful. And lastly, we'll hear from Carmen. Carmen?
Yeah, hello everyone. So my story starts back in 2011. Everybody talked about, all you ladies talking about it just sounds so benevolent, the relationship you have with God with this, because mine was fraught. Me and God was fighting like cats and dogs during the entire time. So I was mad at him, and I'm so glad his feelings are not easily hurt, because I have said things like, you don't care anything about me. And so I've gone through all of that. But in 2011, I was 42. And so I was diagnosed with, and I had an MRI. And so I had that, someone else had talked about, Dr. Frost had talked about the MRI journey. So I had MRIs because I had so much family history that insurance would incorporate that as a part of screening. And so the very first time I had the MRI, that's when the breast cancer was found. And so, and I had 2 lumps in one breast. And so, was just very angry, went through, and I was actually in school. I was at the University of Oklahoma working on my bachelor's in nursing. So I didn't know if I should finish, if I should continue to go. And so I had a little voice, I really feel was the Holy Spirit saying, you just keep going until you absolutely have to stop. And so, and that's what I did. And so I had, the mastectomy first. Then after the mastectomy, the doctor, my breast surgeon said, everything looks good. We're going to get you over to oncology to see about getting you started on chemo. And being a nurse, don't ask me why. That did not cross my mind. But when she said that, I literally felt like she slapped me in the face and called me the N-word, because I was like, who she thinks she's going to do chemo? So I went and talked to the oncologist. We had our first consult, and he gave me a packet, and he said, I want you to get genetically tested. And I put that packet aside, and I said, I'm trying to live. I don't care about that. I'm not doing chemo. I'm not doing any of it. And so we had our conversations, and I told him why. He listened to me, and he listened to my concerns. And I was like, as I work in oncology, these people are sick as dogs. They're in and out the hospital. I'm not the one to do that. I don't like not feeling good. I don't want people looking at me and being like, oh. So I didn't want to do it. But anyway, so we had a discussion. And so we went ahead and got started. And I went through chemo at 8 rounds, finished up. I graduated from school, bald, my cap and gown, and treatment continued even after that and stuff. So once everything was finished, because I had the mastectomy and then I had the implant put in. And so once everything was done with that, I went and got genetically tested and found out I had a BRCA2 genetic mutation. And one of the, a couple of the factors was, like I said, the extensive family history. My mom had breast cancer in her mid-50s. And I had a male cousin who had breast cancer twice. And so that was the kicker for me getting tested. So I got tested on Christmas of 2011 and made the decision, please go ahead and take my and this was my decision, please take my other breast, take my ovary. And so I had that done, and I've just been kind of, I had implants put in, and next week, believe it or not, next week I'm having deep surgery on my birthday. I'm having the fat transfer. I'm having the implants taken out and stuff. So my journey continues even now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carmen. So we have time for just one more word. And one of the questions that we received was, what message would you like to provide to women in your community? That's something that's short, sweet, and to the point. what message? And we'll start with Tracy. We'll go down, and this will conclude our presentation. This has been wonderful to get this information out here, because I know for myself, talking about certain things is just very difficult. So we'll start with Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, this is very, very wonderful. What I would say to the women is, don't forget who you are. You know your body better than anyone. Advocate for yourself, advocate for yourself, advocate for yourself, and ask questions. Don't stop asking questions, and tell your story. And don't feel bad about telling your story.
That's right.
You get a group of women with you, support you, you support them, we support one another. On this panel, we are supporting one another each night. But please don't forget who you are.
Oh, awesome. We'll go to Dr. Frost. Just 1-2 words. What would you tell women in the community? Unmute. There you go.
Value yourself. You are important. All the people that you have to take care of, you can't do it unless you take care of yourself. Right. Value
Absolutely.
yourself.
And Andrea, what 1 word or 2 that you would give to advice to the community?
2 words. Ditto, that everybody has said, and trust God.
Jackie?
I would say to all the ladies, I would say early detection saves lives, and God is a healer. So don't worry about what you're going through. Just look to him for your help.
And Carmen, you get the last word. What would you say?
Ditto what everyone said.
Okay.
Advocate for yourself.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our presentation. That's our time. Thank you so much to our keynote speaker, to the panelists, to the cancer survivors, and to who all viewed this program. I hope it was beneficial. You received education, information, enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much, and good evening.
Thank you.